Okay, in this lesson, we're going to talk about Andrew Jackson actually is now in the White House. Remember the corrupt bargain of 1824? Yeah, Andrew Jackson and his supporters felt that they had been cheated by, John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay, in 1828 in the election where John Quincy Adams defends his presidency. He's up for re-election. He is crushed by Andrew Jackson. It was a very ugly personal battle, but now the very popular Andrew Jackson is now in the White House. Let's talk a little bit about Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, is an interesting man, interesting character. He has a lot of pros and cons. His family had immigrated over from Ireland. They'd settled in the Carolinas. Both of his parents died when he was really young. And at 13, he actually joins the Patriots during the American Revolutionary War. He was captured by a British officer. There's a story that a British officer said, "Hey, son, get over here, clean my boots." Jackson refuses. The British officer pulls out his sword and hits him with the flat part of the sword and scarred him. And he never forgot that and obviously never forgave the British. After the Revolutionary War, he studies law. He moves out to Tennessee where he sets up a law practice. He also becomes very wealthy speculating, which means he's buying up land. So he becomes a very wealthy man investing in real estate. He was elected to Congress in his 20s. He's one of the war hawks, people that are encouraging America to go to war during the War of 1812 or the years leading up to that. And he becomes extremely famous in the War of 1812. If you remember, he is the hero of New Orleans. His nickname is Old Hickory, tough as hickory, they say. He is also the guy that led American forces to victory at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, where he crushes the Creeks and forces the Creeks to give up a lot of land in Georgia and Alabama. All right? So that's a little bit of background on Andrew Jackson. Okay, one of the earliest controversial moves that Jackson does is when he gets into office, he fires a bunch of people from federal positions. And he replaces over 200 presidential appointees with his own friends and supporters. Okay? A lot of people said, "Hey, man, this is wrong. You have to have qualified people in there." Jackson argues that, he's giving the chance to share the democratic ideals with common men. He feels that a lot of these government positions don't have to go to wealthy or highly educated men, that just a common guy could, is more than capable of running these jobs. So he replaced them again with his own supporters. Critics said these men were not qualified to hold these positions, and many were not. And some of Jackson's supporters argue that to the victor goes the spoils. In other words, to the victor, which is Andrew Jackson, goes the rewards. And those rewards are jobs, government jobs. So this is from that time on called the spoil system. Now, several presidents had done that in the past, but not to the scale that Andrew Jackson had. He just, stacks the deck with people who had supported him in his election, or his run for the office in 1824 and his victory in 1828. So it's pretty controversial. Instead of picking the most highly qualified people, he just puts in his supporters. As we mentioned in the last slide, Jackson gave many supporters cabinet-level jobs. Whoops, I need to change colors here on this one. Hang on. Cabinet-level jobs, all right? And remember the cabinet. There's those chief advisors that are really going to help the president make educated decisions. Now, only one of these guys in the cabinet, Secretary of State Martin Van Buren, future president, was qualified for the job. Oh, by the way, again, notice that, Secretary of State. Remember I told you, if you want to become president someday, the job you want is not vice president. Secretary of State seems to be the most coveted position for a future presidential hopeful. All right, now, here's the deal with his cabinet. He seldom meets with his government officials or his cabinet. In fact, he hires and fires them all the time. Oh my gosh. So this group of cabinet is very ineffectual. He never meets with them. Instead, he meets with a group of unofficial advisors, people that actually don't have an official position. This group becomes known as the kitchen cabinet because they met in the White House kitchen. These are newspapermen, friends, guys that Jackson can trust to give him what he feels is good advice. Okay, you really can't talk about Andrew Jackson's first term without talking about the bank war. The bank war. Remember, the Bank of the United States has been pretty controversial ever since Alexander Hamilton first came up with the idea. Democratic Republicans said that you can't have a Bank of the United States because it wasn't in the Constitution. But even Jefferson, probably the strongest proponent or opponent of the Bank of the United States, once he becomes president, he even realizes the Bank of the United States is necessary. In fact, he uses the Bank of the United States to finance the Louisiana Purchase. But Jackson thought the Bank of the United States was too powerful, okay, because it controlled loans made by state banks. Now, the president of the Bank of the United States at the time is a guy named Nicholas Biddle. Nicholas Biddle becomes the president of the bank in 1823, 5 years before Jackson becomes president. Jackson thought that Biddle was a snake in the grass. He thought that Biddle was using this position as president of the bank to benefit rich people. Biddle is using the bank to benefit rich. And remember, Jackson is a man of the common people, he says. But Biddle has powerful friends. Nicholas Biddle has influence over some members of Congress. And there's many people in Congress that do not like Andrew Jackson. Now, the Whig Party, remember we talked about the Whigs. After the War of 1812, if you remember, with the Hartford Convention, many of those old Federalists had wanted to secede from the Union because they're upset with the United States being at war with Great Britain. Well, after the War of 1812, the Federalist Party is done. It's gone. They look like traitors. So for a time, from about 1814 all the way up to about 1828, there's only been one political party. That's the Democratic Republicans. Well, the Whigs, are running in opposition of Jackson. They don't like him. Now, the Whigs thought that this bank issue, this brouhaha that's happening between Andrew Jackson and Joseph Biddle might be their ticket to get Jackson out. All right? So the Whigs thought that they could save the bank and get Jackson out of office. And guess who's in charge of this? Our old friend, Henry Clay. Henry Clay from Kentucky. Remember, Henry Clay is the war hawk who has pushed for war with the southern states. Henry Clay is the guy that's the sectional leader. Henry Clay came up with the American system. And also Henry Clay was part of the corrupt bargain and Secretary of State under John Quincy Adams. Okay, so Henry Clay has got a lot of influence. So he pushes a bill through the Congress to renew the bank charter in 1832 before the next election. Now, Henry Clay knows for a fact that Andrew Jackson is going to veto this bill, and he wants him to, because he thinks that if Jackson vetoes this bill, it is going to anger the voters, and which is going to cause Andrew Jackson to lose the election, or so he thinks. Now, Jackson has his own reasons for vetoing the bill. Number one, he said, again, the bank is unconstitutional. We've heard that argument before. Remember, Thomas Jefferson said that the Bank of the United States was not in the Constitution, therefore it's unconstitutional. But Jackson's second point is he feels that the bank is only there to help the rich people. Now, the Whigs are going to make a big issue of this during the election of 1832. But Jackson wins a stunning victory. Whoops, whoa, what happened there? Well, a stunning victory over Henry Clay. Okay? Because, remember, the common man probably doesn't understand how the Bank of the United States is helping the economy. They don't understand the benefit of having a bank to regulate the amount of money available. They don't understand the bank making loans to businesses. All right? So honestly, for the common guy, this bank is not an important election deal. All right? So now with Jackson's victory, Jackson orders the Secretary of State to stop putting federal money into the Bank of the United States. And the bank closes in 1836. And this is going to lead to an economic disaster. It's a disaster, right? But the common man doesn't see that one coming. Okay, so there you have it. That's what we're going to talk about today. We talk about the spoil system. We talk about his kitchen cabinet. We talk about the bank wars. The next section, we're going to talk about Andrew Jackson, some problems with some southern states. Remember, he's a southerner. We're going to be talking about some tariffs again that pop up, and we're going to talk about some problems he has with the Native Americans. All right, see you next time.